Annelies Anne Marie Frank, Holocaust victim, born June 12, 1929, died early March 1945 at the age of 15, born in Frankfurt, Germany. She is one of the most discussed Jewish victims of the Holocaust. She was born in the city of Frankfurt am Main in Weimar, Germany. She lived most of her life in or near Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Born a German national, Frank lost her citizenship in 1941. She gained international fame after her diary was published in July 1945. It documents her experience hiding through the German occupations of the Netherlands in World War II. The Frank family moved from Germany to Amsterdam in 1933, the year the Nazis gained control over Germany. Otto Frank began working at Opekta Works by February 1934. Edith and the children had arrived in Amsterdam. The two girls were enrolled in school, Margit in public school and Anne in Montessori school. In 1938, Otto started a second company, Pecticon. Herman van Pels was employed by Pecticon as an advisor about spices, a Jewish butcher. He had fled Germany with his family. In May 1940, Germany invaded the Netherlands and the government began to persecute Jews by the implementation of restrictive and discriminatory laws. The mandatory registration and segregation soon followed. In April 1941, Otto transferred his shares in Pecticon to Jones Kleeman and quit as director. The company and all assets of the company were transferred to Guys and Company, which was headed by Jan Guys. In December 1941, Frank followed a similar process to save Opekta. The change allowed Frank to earn a minimal income, but sufficient enough to support his family. For her 13th birthday on 12 June 1942, Anne Frank received a book she had shown her father. Although it was an autograph book, Frank decided she would use it as a diary. While many of her early entries relate to the aspects of her life, she also discusses some of the changes that had taken place in the Netherlands since the German occupation. In her entry dated June 20, 1942, she lists many of the restrictions that had been placed upon the lives of the Jewish population. These are some of the restrictions they had. In July 1942, Margaret Frank got a column notice from the Central Office of Jewish Immigration ordering her to report for relocation to a work camp. Otto Frank told his family that they would go into hiding in rooms above and behind Opekta's building, a street along one of Amsterdam's canals. Some of his most trusted employees would help them. Morning, they went into hiding. On the morning of Monday, July 6, 1942, the family moved into their hiding place, the secret annex. The apartment was left in a state of disarray to give the impression that they had left suddenly. As Jews were not allowed to use public transportation, they walked several kilometers from their home, with each of them wearing several layers of clothing, as they did not dare being seen carrying luggage. They were joined by the Van Pels. She regarded Herman Van Pels and Fritz Pfeiffer as selfish, particularly in regard to the amount of food they consumed. Anne Frank formed a close bond with each of the helpers, and Otto Frank later recalled that she had anticipated their daily visits with impatient enthusiasm. He observed that Anne's closest friendship was the Bet Voskijl, the youngest typist. The two of them often stood whispering in the corner. The Frank sisters formed a closer relationship than had existed before they went into hiding. They liked their studies and hoped to return to school. Frank aspired to become a journalist, writing in a diary on Wednesday, 5 April 1944. I finally realized that I must do my schoolwork to keep from being ignorant, to get on in life, to become a journalist, because that's what I want. I know I can write, but it remains to be seen whether I really have talent. and if I don't have the talent to write books or newspaper articles, I can always write for myself, but I want to achieve more than that. I can't imagine living like my mother, Miss Van Dan, and all the women who go about their work and are then forgotten. I need to have something besides a husband and children to devote myself to. I want to be useful or bring enjoyment to all people, even though I never met. I want to go on living even after my death, and that's why I'm so grateful to God for having given me this gift, which I can use to develop myself and to express all that's inside me. When I write, I can shake off all my cares, my sorrows, despairs. My spirits are revived, and that's a big question. Will I ever be able to write something great? Will I ever become a journalist or a writer? On the morning of August 4th, 1944, the Eichers was stormed by a group of German uniformed police. The Franks, Van Pelses, and Pfeiffer were taken to RSHA headquarters, where they were interrogated and held overnight. On 5 August, they were transferred to the House of Detention and overcrowded prison. 2 days later, they were transported to the Westport Transit Camp. Since they were arrested while hiding, they were considered criminals and were sent to the punishment barracks for hard labor. Mape, Guys, and Bep Voskujul were questioned and threatened by the security police, but they were not detained. They returned to the Eichers the following day and found Anne's papers strewn on the floor. On September 3rd, 1944, the group was deported on what would have been the last transport from Westberg to the Auschwitz concentration camp. After 3 days of being on the train, they arrived. Of the 1,019 passengers, 549, including all children younger than 15, were sent directly to the gas chambers. Frank just turned 15 3 months earlier and was one of the youngest people to be saved from her transport. She was soon made aware that most people were gassed as soon as they got there. She never learned that the whole group from the Archers had survived this selection. The females were forced to strip naked to be disinfected, and her heads were shaved and was tattooed with an identifying number on her arm. At night, they were crammed into overcrowded bars. On October 28, selections began for women to be relocated to Bergen-Belsen. More than 8,000 women, including Anna Margaret Frank and August Van Pels, were transported. Edith Frank was left behind and later died from starvation. Frank was reunited with two friends, Hanel Gosler and Nenit Blitz. Gosler and Blitz survived the war and later discussed the brief conversation they had with Frank through a fence. Blitz described her as bald, emaciated, shivering. Margaret was severely sick. She was too weak to leave her bunk and believed her parents were dead and seen no reason to live. In March 1945, a typhus epidemic spread through the camp, killing 17,000 prisoners. Other diseases, including typhoid fever, were rampant. Due to these chaotic conditions, they didn't know what caused Anne's death. Witnesses later testified Margaret fell from her bunk in her weakened state and was killed by the shock. A few days later, Anne died. This was only a few weeks before the camp was liberated by British troops on 15 April 1945. Anne and Margaret were buried in a mass grave. 1,700 Jews were deported from the Netherlands. Only 5,000 survived. Otto Frank survived this time in Auschwitz. When the war ended, he relocated to Amsterdam. He was given a home by Jan and Miep Gies. As he tried to locate his family, he learned of the death of his wife in Auschwitz, but he remained hopeful that his daughter had survived. After several weeks, he discovered Margaret and Anne had also died. In July 1945, the Red Cross confirmed the deaths of the Frank sister. Miep Gies gave Otto the diary and a bundle of loose notes that she hoped to give back to Anne.